In the fall of 1998, a small passenger aircraft belonging to North Star Airways took off from Chicago O'Hare International Airport, bound for Denver. It was supposed to be a routine 2-hour flight. On board were business travelers rushing to meetings, families heading home, and several college students returning from a holiday break. For everyone, it was just another flight, ordinary, uneventful, and quickly forgotten once it landed. But Flight 452 would never arrive in Denver. Just 45 minutes after departure, the aircraft vanished from radar screens. At first, air traffic controllers assumed it was a temporary transponder failure. Technical glitches happen. Pilots re-establish contact all the time. But 5 minutes became 15, then 30, and the silence stretched into an hour. By then, panic was spreading in the control room. Rescue planes were dispatched, and search teams combed the flight path. But there was nothing. No wreckage, no distress call, no emergency beacon. It was as if the plane had been erased from the sky. The media went into overdrive. Headlines screamed. The ghost flight of 452. America's strangest aviation mystery. A crash without a trace. What terrified the public wasn't just the disappearance itself, but the disturbing coincidence. 3 years earlier, another small jet had vanished along almost the exact same route. That plane was never found. Now, people were whispering about a cursed corridor in the skies. 2 weeks later, the first fragment of wreckage finally surfaced, a twisted piece of wing discovered high in the Colorado mountains. Investigators hoped it would unravel the mystery. Instead, it deepened it. The metal wasn't just bent by impact. It looked scorched, almost melted, as though it had been exposed to temperatures far beyond what a normal aviation fire could produce. Experts admitted they had never seen damage like it. Even stranger, the aircraft's black boxes, designed to survive virtually anything, were missing entirely. Then came the eyewitness accounts. Residents of a small town in Iowa swore they had seen strange lights in the night sky trailing behind the plane before it disappeared. Others reported hearing an eerie low hum that escalated into a piercing whistle, seconds before the lights blinked out. These people didn't know each other, yet their stories matched almost perfectly. By now, the FBI had quietly stepped in, taking control of the case. Officially, the line was technical malfunction compounded by weather. But off the record, investigators were whispering something else entirely. An anonymous source claimed that one passenger on Flight 452 wasn't just another traveler. He was a former engineer for a major defense contractor. Allegedly, he was carrying classified documents that could expose massive corruption in military contracts. If true, it meant Flight 452 wasn't just an accident, it could have been sabotage. 1 month into the investigation, search teams uncovered another clue, a panel from the fuselage marked with symbols that had no place on a civilian jet. When tested, the paint revealed radioactive traces, elements usually found in experimental military hardware. How did a commercial aircraft end up with military-grade markings? Families of the victims added even more unsettling layers. One woman revealed that her brother, a passenger, had called her the night before the flight. His last words were chilling: "If something happens to me tomorrow, remember, it won't be an accident." Another revelation came from inside the airline itself. A technician leaked information about a mysterious phone call the company received the night before takeoff. A distorted voice warned, "Do not let Flight 452 depart. If it takes off, nobody will return." The call was never made public, but rumors spread fast. Despite these discoveries, the official investigation seemed to stall. Reports grew vague, updates became rare, and press conferences turned into carefully worded stonewalls. It felt as though someone wanted the truth buried. Independent journalists refused to let go. They dug into weather reports, crew backgrounds, and even satellite imagery of the flight path that night. And on one declassified image, a bizarre detail appeared, a glowing anomaly high above Iowa. It wasn't a thunderstorm. It wasn't lightning. It looked like a burst of light stretching unnaturally, almost as if a doorway had opened in the sky. When the photo leaked online, conspiracy theories exploded. Was Flight 452 the victim of sabotage? A cover-up? Or had it stumbled into something beyond human comprehension? And then came the most shocking twist. 6 months later, a hiker in the Rockies claimed to have found a half-buried oxygen mask. Attached to the strap was a note, scrawled in trembling handwriting. It read, "We are not alone. They don't want us to land." The discovery of the oxygen mask with the handwritten note sent shockwaves through both investigators and the public. If authentic, it meant at least one passenger had been conscious long after the official time of disappearance. But authorities quickly dismissed the note as a hoax, claiming there was no evidence of relevance to Flight 452. Yet independent handwriting experts compared the scrawl to samples from a missing passenger, a college professor named Dr. Alan Reeves. The match was striking. If true, the note wasn't a hoax at all. It was a message, a final warning. Dr. Reeves wasn't just any professor. He specialized in theoretical physics, with a focus on quantum fields and anomalies in atmospheric energy. His research had long been under government contracts, much of it classified. And suddenly, conspiracy theorists had a new angle. Maybe Flight 452 wasn't brought down by a storm or sabotage, but by something Dr. Reeves had been studying. Meanwhile, families of the victims grew increasingly angry. They accused the airline and the government of concealing the truth. Press conferences turned chaotic, with grieving relatives demanding answers. One widow shouted on live television, "You're lying to us. My husband texted me, he said there were lights outside the plane before it vanished." The clip went viral, fueling even more speculation. Behind the scenes, things became even stranger. A retired Air Force pilot came forward anonymously, claiming he had been scrambled that very night for an unusual operation. His mission? To intercept an unidentified aerial object reported along the exact same corridor where Flight 452 disappeared. The pilot swore he had seen something enormous, larger than any plane he had ever encountered, hovering silently in the clouds. And then, in an instant, it vanished. His squadron was ordered never to speak of it again. The press seized on the revelation, branding it the Iowa encounter. Was Flight 452 caught in the middle of something otherworldly? Adding fuel to the fire, radar logs leaked by a whistleblower revealed several unexplained blips shadowing Flight 452 minutes before it disappeared. These objects didn't match any known aircraft signatures. They appeared, and then simply winked out of existence. As months dragged on, the official investigation released a final report: probable cause, severe turbulence leading to catastrophic structural failure. But the report was full of holes. No conclusive wreckage. No black boxes. No distress call. Just vague technical jargon. It read more like a cover-up than an explanation. Independent researchers weren't satisfied. A group of aviation enthusiasts and former investigators formed a private task force. They raised money, chartered helicopters, and launched their own search missions into the Rockies. For weeks they found nothing, until one fateful morning, when they stumbled upon a hidden valley, completely isolated from view. Inside, half buried under snow, lay what looked like the twisted fuselage of Flight 452. But it wasn't burned. It wasn't shattered. It was warped, as though the metal had been pulled and stretched like clay. The team photographed everything. The images shocked the world. And in one close-up, a detail emerged that nobody could explain. Embedded deep in the fuselage was a foreign object, a fragment of some kind of alloy, smooth, reflective, and unlike anything found on Earth. Metallurgists who analyzed the photos claimed the structure looked non-human in origin. When the samples were later tested in a private lab, the results were baffling. The material had isotopic ratios that did not exist in naturally occurring elements on Earth. Almost immediately, the task force's findings were discredited by official sources. The wreckage, they said, was likely debris from an unrelated crash. The alloy? Contaminated testing. But the more they denied, the more the public believed something extraordinary had happened. Meanwhile, whispers began spreading online. What if Flight 452 had crossed into a dimensional rift? After all, the corridor where it vanished had long been known for strange phenomena, mysterious lights, sudden compass failures, even reports from local farmers of time slips, where minutes vanished without explanation. The so-called Bermuda Triangle of the Midwest theory began gaining traction. People claimed the government had long known about this aerial anomaly, but had kept it quiet to avoid mass panic. But then, a new piece of evidence surfaced that pushed the mystery into terrifying new territory. A backpack belonging to one of the missing college students was discovered miles from the supposed crash site. Inside was a camcorder, badly damaged, but the tape inside remained partially intact. When the footage was restored, investigators were stunned. It showed shaky, chaotic images from inside the cabin of Flight 452. Passengers looked frightened, some clutching their seats, others pointing toward the windows. The last few seconds were the most disturbing, the cabin filled with a blinding blue-white light, accompanied by a deep, resonant hum that seemed to shake the camera itself. Then, static. There was no impact. No screaming. Just silence. The video leaked online, igniting a media storm. Millions viewed it within hours. To skeptics, it was just a hoax. But to believers, it was undeniable proof, Flight 452 hadn't crashed. It had been taken. As the debate raged, survivors' families clung to hope. If there had been no crash, then maybe, just maybe, their loved ones were still alive somewhere. But where? And how? That question haunted the nation. And it was about to get even darker. Because just as the public obsession with Flight 452 reached its peak, another aircraft flying the same route reported something chilling, strange lights in the clouds, identical to those seen the night 452 vanished. Was the phenomenon returning? Was history about to repeat itself? Not long after the leaked camcorder footage shook the world, commercial airlines began quietly rerouting flights to avoid the corridor where Flight 452 had vanished. Officially, they blamed routine air traffic adjustments. But pilots knew better. Something in those skies was wrong. And then, it happened again. A regional cargo plane, Flight 927, vanished without warning while traveling nearly the same route. Unlike Flight 452, this time the crew had seconds to radio a distress call. The last transmission was chilling. "Control, we are not alone up here. Something, it's above us." Then, static. By the time search teams mobilized, the aircraft was gone. No wreckage. No signal. Nothing. The chilling similarity to Flight 452 sparked panic. Suddenly, what had been dismissed as conspiracy theories no longer seemed so far-fetched. Mainstream outlets that once mocked the idea of anomalies began running serious investigations. Could a hidden phenomenon, or something even more sinister, be stalking the skies? Meanwhile, the private task force that had discovered the warped fuselage of Flight 452 went back into the Rockies to search for clues. What they found was worse than anything they imagined. Deep inside the valley, near the supposed crash site, they stumbled upon a makeshift camp. Scattered belongings, fire pits, torn clothing. Signs that at least some passengers had survived the disappearance, at least for a while. But there were no bodies. No skeletons. Only empty tents and abandoned supplies. As if the survivors had simply walked away. Or been taken. One object in particular stood out, a notebook, badly weathered but still legible. Its pages contained frantic entries, scrawled by one of the passengers. The handwriting matched that of Dr. Alan Reeves, the physicist. The entries told a terrifying story. He wrote of waking up in the valley, confused and disoriented. Many passengers were alive, though some were injured. They tried to make sense of what had happened. The plane hadn't crashed in the usual sense, it had folded into the valley, as though reality itself had bent around them. Reeves described nights filled with strange lights in the sky and sounds that seemed to come from inside their own minds. People claimed to hear voices, whispers telling them to leave the valley. Some followed the voices and never returned. One passage stood out. The light comes for us at night. It takes the willing first. The rest of us resist, but I fear it's only a matter of time. This place is not natural. It's not Earth as we know it. We've crossed into somewhere else. The last entry ended abruptly. They're here. After that, nothing. The discovery of the journal ignited worldwide debate. If real, it meant passengers had survived for weeks, maybe longer, after the disappearance. But what had happened to them afterward? Government officials dismissed the notebook as planted evidence. But families of the victims refused to believe it was fake. They recognized Reeves' handwriting. They recognized his scientific notations in the margins. It was real. Then came the twist that nobody expected. Satellite data analysts reviewing archived footage from the night of Flight 452's disappearance noticed something strange, a massive spike of electromagnetic energy, localized exactly over the corridor where the plane vanished. It lasted only seconds, then faded without a trace. But it wasn't natural. This led some to propose a radical theory: Flight 452 hadn't crashed. It had slipped through an interdimensional rift, a tear in the fabric of spacetime itself. The media called it the Gateway Theory. But if true, it posed terrifying questions. Where did the rift lead? Were the passengers trapped in another world? Or worse, had something from that world come into ours? The leaked camcorder footage, the warped fuselage, the strange alloy, the missing survivors, it all began to fit into a horrifying puzzle. And then, just when the world thought the mystery couldn't deepen further, another revelation shook everything. A hiker exploring the Rockies recorded drone footage over a remote canyon. The video, uploaded anonymously, showed something no one could explain: a massive, circular scar on the earth, nearly half a mile wide, glowing faintly blue even in daylight. At the center of the scar was a structure, jagged, metallic, and pulsing faintly as though alive. When the footage spread online, people immediately connected it to the disappearances. Was this the rift? Was it a machine? Or a portal? Officials quickly declared the video a digital fabrication. Yet the hiker who had uploaded it disappeared days later. His channel was wiped. His identity erased. By now, panic had reached fever pitch. Airlines demanded answers. Citizens staged protests. Families of the victims marched on government buildings, demanding to know why the truth was being buried. Through it all, one terrifying possibility began to emerge: what if Flight 452 and Flight 927 weren't accidents? What if something, or someone, was deliberately targeting planes over that corridor? And if so, why? Theories abounded. Some whispered about secret military experiments gone wrong. Others believed the region concealed alien technology, or worse, a doorway to a place humanity was never meant to see. But one thing was clear: the skies over the Rockies were no longer safe. And as night fell, with strange lights once again flickering in the clouds, people began asking a chilling question. Would another plane be next? Have you ever checked into a motel, tossed your bag on the bed, and felt that strange, heavy silence? That eerie sense that something just isn't right? Most people brush it off as travel nerves. But in the summer of 1998, in a quiet town in Nevada, a man walked into a roadside motel, checked in, and was never seen again. What makes this case so disturbing is not just the disappearance itself, but the series of bizarre events that followed, events so strange that investigators, decades later, still don't know what to believe. This is the story of David Harris, a story that blurs the line between truth, legend, and something darker. David was 34 years old, an ordinary man by all accounts. He wasn't rich, wasn't famous, wasn't the type of person anyone would expect to become the subject of one of Nevada's creepiest unsolved mysteries. He worked as an IT technician in Reno, lived alone, and had no criminal record. But he did have a habit of taking long solo road trips on weekends. He loved small towns, quiet diners, and the kind of motels most people would avoid. His friends said he liked to get lost for a while, as if he needed a break from modern life. On July 17, 1998, David packed a duffel bag, got in his old Toyota Corolla, and drove south on Highway 95. He told his coworker he just wanted a little desert air. It was supposed to be a 2-day trip. He never came back. The last confirmed sighting of David was at a gas station in Tonopah around 6:45 p.m. Security footage shows him paying for gas and a pack of cigarettes. He looked calm, nothing unusual. About 20 minutes later, he checked into the Desert Moon Motel, a faded, low-budget roadside place with about 12 rooms. The motel still stands today, though it's long abandoned. The motel owner, an older woman named Clara Thompson, remembered David clearly. She told police that he asked for a room facing the highway, paid in cash, and didn't seem drunk or high. She gave him room 6. She even said he smiled politely before walking away with his key. That was the last time anyone could confirm David was alive. What happened in the next 12 hours is what has haunted people ever since. The next morning, Clara noticed David's car still parked outside room 6. Nothing unusual, guests often slept in. But by checkout time at 11 a.m., the car was still there. Clara knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked harder. Silence. Finally, she used her spare key. Inside, the room looked wrong. David's bag was open on the bed, clothes neatly folded. His wallet and ID were on the nightstand, next to a half-empty glass of water. But the bed was perfectly made, like no one had slept in it. The bathroom light was on, but the room was empty. And here's the strangest detail, all of David's belongings were accounted for, except his shoes. The police were called. They searched the entire property, the desert behind the motel, and the surrounding highway. No trace of David. No footprints in the sand. No signs of struggle. It was as if he had walked out of his room barefoot, and vanished into the desert night. As weeks turned into months, the case only grew stranger. Witnesses began to come forward with conflicting stories. One trucker swore he saw David walking along the highway at around 2 a.m., miles from the motel. Another claimed he saw a barefoot man near an abandoned mine shaft the same night. But when police searched, nothing was found. Then came the letters. About 6 months after David's disappearance, his sister received a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. Typed in block letters were the words, "Stop looking. He is with us now." The FBI tested the letter but found no fingerprints, no DNA, no leads. The case grew cold. For years, conspiracy theories spread like wildfire online. Some believed David was murdered by the motel owner and buried in the desert. Others thought he staged his own disappearance to start a new life. But the most chilling theory? That the Desert Moon Motel itself was cursed. You see, when journalists dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. Between 1971 and 1998, at least 4 other guests had checked into the same motel, and vanished without explanation. A traveling salesman. A hitchhiker. Even a young couple on their honeymoon. None were ever found. And in each case, their belongings were left behind in the room, except their shoes. Coincidence? Or something darker? Some paranormal enthusiasts claim the motel sits on land once used for occult rituals in the 1950s. They point to strange markings carved into the foundation of the building, symbols that resemble protection wards, or perhaps traps. Others believe the disappearances are linked to an underground tunnel system from the old mining days. Maybe the guests were lured, or pulled, into something beneath the desert floor. But the strangest development came in 2013, 15 years after David vanished. A group of urban explorers broke into the abandoned Desert Moon Motel and filmed their exploration. In room 6, they found something that chills me even now. On the wall, under layers of peeling wallpaper, were dozens of handprints. Bare handprints, pressed into the plaster as if people had clawed or pushed against it. The video went viral, but the motel was quickly boarded up by authorities. So, what really happened to David Harris? Was he the victim of foul play? Did he simply walk into the desert and die, his body lost to the sands? Or did he become part of something much stranger, something tied to the long, dark history of the Desert Moon Motel? We may never know the truth. What we do know is that the case remains unsolved, the file still open in Nevada's missing persons database. David Harris was never found. No remains, no evidence, no closure for his family. Just an open door to one of the creepiest unsolved mysteries of the American desert. And the next time you check into a roadside motel, ask yourself, what happened in room 6?